This is a video to go over some of the basics for rhythm practice. I have my students practice rhythm every day, and so this is to help them and you understand a little bit more about how to do that. So first off, I want to go over time signature. The time signature tells you at the beginning of the music how many beats per measure and what kind of note gets the beat. The most common time signature is 4/4. So you will see in your music 4/4. This was so common back in the day that they decided instead of writing 4/4, they were going to put the letter C. Like this. So you'll see both of those in your music, the 4/4 or the C, but not at the same time, just one or the other. So just know that those are exactly the same thing. For this purpose, I'm going to keep it as 4/4. Now the top number represents how many beats per measure. There's 4 up here, so that means 4 beats per measure. Okay. Then the bottom note means what type of note gets that kind of beat. So this 4 represents that it's the quarter note that gets the beat. So if your teacher or anyone asks you, what does 4/4 mean? You say, 4 beats per measure and the quarter note gets the beat. So I'm going to explain a little bit more what that means. Okay, let me erase all this and start clean. So 4/4. Now, remember, it's 4 beats per measure and the quarter note gets the beat. So I'm going to write out a few measures, a couple measures here. That is, I need to go over that with you, a measure. A measure is a certain amount of space that defines like how many notes you're going to have in that space that's supposed to match what 4/4 is, which is your time signature. So from here to here is one measure. And from here to the next line is another measure. So I'll put the line over here. So this is measure 1. This is measure 2. Now if you came down here to the next line and you drew a line here, this would be measure 3. This is measure 4. And so on. So this time signature is referring to one of the measures. Each measure has 4 beats in the measure and the quarter note gets the beat. Now, just to go over what I've written down here to keep me on track, I have the word rhythm, the word timing, and the word beat. I wrote those all down to remind me and you that those all pretty much mean the same. If someone says, can you make sure you do the right rhythm? Or can you do the right timing? Or can you keep the beat? Those pretty much refer to the same thing. So you have to make sure that when you're doing playing the drums or playing the violin or whatever you're doing, that you keep the exact rhythm that the time signature is telling you to. So that's what that means. So I'm going to write out 4 quarter notes. This is what this time signature is saying. 4 beats in the measure and the quarter note gets the beat. So here's 1 quarter note, 2, 3, 4. So no matter what, in this measure, there has to be an equivalent of 4 quarter notes. Now here's the tricky part. It doesn't always have to be just quarter notes. It can be other types of notes. It just has to fill up 4 beats exactly. So this is what I'm going to go over now is the different kind of notes that can fill up this measure to take up 4 beats. And that can be the confusing part, but hopefully I can explain it well. First off, we're going to explain what a whole note is. A whole note is just, looks like a circle. That's it. It's not filled in. There it is. A whole note is 4 beats. Takes up the entire measure because, remember, the 4/4 means 4 beats in a measure. So here, the whole note gets 4 beats. So you only need one whole note in one measure. Next would be the half note. Now, to make it not so confusing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all of these things and go over, write them out so it'll be easier to understand for you. Pardon me, turning my back to you. All right, so we have a whole note here. And at the moment, we're not paying attention to measures or anything. I'm just going to write down all of these notes underneath each other to help explain what I'm trying to get across. So here's a whole note. A whole note gets 4 beats. Next note is half note. Half note is a circle with a stem. A half note. One half note gets 2 beats. 1, 2, and then the next one is another 2 beats. 3, 4. So in 4/4 time, a whole note can take up 1 measure. 2 half notes can take up 1 measure. Then after that comes the quarter notes. This is what quarter notes look like. 1 quarter note is 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So guess what? 4 quarter notes take up 1 whole measure in 4/4 time. Next we have eighth notes. Now if you notice there's a pattern going on. 2 of these go into 1 of those. 2 of these go into 1 of those. Now if we keep going, 2 eighth notes go into 1 quarter note. So I'm going to write 2 eighth notes down here. Now this was where it can get a little confusing. Eighth notes can be written a couple different ways. Usually you'll see them like this, or sometimes, whoopsie daisies, sometimes they'll be like this. Now, when you have 2 eighth notes right next to each other, somewhere along the line, someone came up with the rule that when you do that, just combine them like this and take away this little flag here. But you have to remember that these are 2 separate notes, even though they're combined with 1 line. That can be super confusing. So let's try that again. 2 eighth notes. They're separate notes. But when you put them next to each other, you will usually see it in the music. See how there's 1 flag on it? 1 flag here. You're just going to take that flag away and combine them with 1 little bar straight across, or 1 line straight across. Those are 2 separate notes, but they look like 1 group. That's the confusing part. The same thing goes for here. Oh, let's combine those. So you draw that line over and you take those little flags away. And those are eighth notes. Okay. So 2 eighth notes are equal to 1 quarter note. All right. Now I'm going to erase this just because I'm running out of room. But we've gone over the whole note. Whole note's up here. Half note, quarter note, eighth note, and the next is their 16th note. Before we go to the 16th note, though, how to count eighth notes are like this. You count them as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, next we're going to do the 16th notes. Now, if you can catch on to the pattern, you will know, if I ask, how many 16th notes are in 1 eighth note? You should think, 2, because we're following this pattern of 2 half notes go into 1 whole note. 2 quarter notes go into 1 half note. 2 eighth notes go into 1 quarter note. And then 2 16th notes go into, 2 16th notes that I'm going to draw go into an eighth note. Okay. So, when you see 16th notes next to each other, they will look like this. Now, it's similar to the eighth notes. 16th notes have two little flags on them like this, or they can be drawn both ways, up or down like this. See these two flags? That's what these bars represent. So when two 16th notes are next to each other, you, instead of doing these little flags like this, you combine them with the lines. So I'm going to, like that, I'm going to go, oh, look, I'm just going to combine it with the two lines instead and take away those little flags. So that can be confusing as well, but keep in mind that that's how it's usually written in music. So 8th notes have one bar or one flag. 16th notes have two bars or two flags. It's the same thing. So I'm going to continue writing out these 16th notes so that you will know how many go for each of the notes above it. Now, the way to count 16th notes is 1 E and A. So I'm going to write that down here. 1 E and A. Looks like an A, but I say A. 2 E and A. 3 E and A. 4 E and A. Wow, okay. So this covers the basics of the notes that you'll see in music. Of course, there's a combination of all these that's a little bit more advanced, but this is the basics. There are other notes called 32nd notes, 64th notes, and there are rests that also coincide with these types of notes. But just for the basics, I'm going to just go over this. Now, I want to make sure that you understand how many beats each one of these notes take or cover. So we went over the 4/4, which is a time signature. That time signature tells you how many beats per measure, 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. So you might think, well, that means I just have to fill every measure with a quarter note. But that's not true. Everything has to equal 4 quarter notes. So if I put, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 eighth notes in one measure, that is equal to 4 quarter notes. If I put all of these 16th notes, 16 of them, in one measure, that would equal 4 quarter notes. That can be a little confusing, so I'm going to try and explain it a little bit better by going back up here to the whole note. Whole note is 4 beats. So when you see a whole note and you're playing it, you just hold it and you count to 4. So I'm going to get my drum and show you kind of what I mean by that. So I'm going to tap my foot with the beat, which is the quarter note gets the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your quarter note. And I'm going to bang on the drum a whole note. Now the whole note, there's only one note, so I just go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the whole note, covers the entire measure. Now, here's the half note. Each half note gets 2 beats. So, tap my foot again. This is the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to do the half note. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 of them take up 4 beats. Go back to the whole note. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next is the quarter notes. Each quarter note gets 1 beat. So I'm going to hit the drum 4 times because I see 4 notes. I'm going to get my foot tapping again on the quarter notes. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So quarter notes take up the entire measure. Now here's the eighth notes. Now this gets the tricky part because these are pretty self-explanatory, but the eighth notes are, it's kind of like division or fractions in math. 1/8 note is half a beat. Let's go back to the quarter note. The quarter note is 1 beat. You take half of 1 and you get half left over. So if I have a 1/4 note or the pencil and I break the pencil in half, I'm stuck with 1/2 a pencil and the other half of a pencil. Those together are the 8th note. There's 2 8th notes in 1/4 note. So to count them, 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So bang the drum for however many notes I see. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If I go back to quarter notes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now what's the hardest part is to keep your foot only tapping the quarter notes. That's the super hard part, I think, because your foot and your hand want to do the same thing. You have to keep your foot exactly only doing the quarter notes, no matter what. Okay, now let's hop on to 16th notes. There are 16th notes. 1/16th note is the equivalent of 1/4 of a beat. That's why it takes 4 of them to make 1 beat. 4 16th notes to equal 1/4 note. So those are counted like this. Here's our beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Ah, that can be kind of fun sometimes. Now, what you can do is you can combine and mix and match all these just as long as they all equal 4 beats. That is totally fine in 4/4 time. So I could do this. I could put 1/4 note, and then after that put 2 8th notes. After that put 4 16th notes, and then I could go back to just 1/4 note. That would sound like this. 1, 2, and 3E and a 4. 1, 2, and 3E and a 4. It's a little confusing. So what I'm going to do, hopefully this makes sense. You can freeze your video and look at that. Exactly how you count everything. But just so you know, you can have a combination of all these in one measure. So I'm going to show you that really fast. All right, so let's say we did 1/4 note. That takes up 1 beat. Here we go, 1 beat. Then I'm going to do some 8th notes. Let's see, let's do these. And you look here. How do I count 8th notes? I can't remember. Oh yeah, let's look at our cheat sheet. It's 2 and. This gets 1 beat. This note gets half a beat. This note gets the other half of the beat. So now we have 2 beats. Now let's put some 16th notes in. How do you count those? You look down at your cheat sheet. You count them 3, E, and So we have 1, 2, and 3, E, and Now we're missing 1 beat, so we have to figure out what will take up 1 beat. Well, let's put in possibly another quarter note. Okay, let's do that. And that will be beat 4.